Lieutenant James Thompson checked his compass for the third time in 5 minutes. Something wasn't right. The small arrow spun wildly, refusing to point north. He glanced at the clear blue sky above the Atlantic Ocean, then back at the instrument panel of his TBM Avenger torpedo bomber. Base, this is Flight 19 lead. We're experiencing compass malfunctions. Over, he said into his radio, trying to keep his voice steady. The other 4 planes in his training formation followed closely behind, their crews probably facing the same issues. The voice of the control tower crackled through his headset. Flight 19, maintain your heading. Weather conditions are clear. Over. Thompson wiped sweat from his forehead. The December sun wasn't particularly hot, but anxiety made his flight suit feel too tight. They had left the Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale 2 hours ago for a routine training mission. Everything had been normal until they entered this patch of ocean. Robert, how's your compass reading? Thompson called out to Lieutenant Robert Miller in the plane to his right. All over the place, sir. Can't get a steady bearing. Miller responded, his usually confident voice showing signs of worry. The formation of 5 planes continued forward, their crews increasingly uneasy. Below them, the ocean had taken on a strange, darker shade of blue. Thompson had flown over these waters countless times during training missions, but something felt different today. Base, this is Flight 19. Request permission to change course. We're unable to verify our position. Over. Thompson's thumb pressed hard against the radio button. Static filled the channel for several long seconds before the tower responded. Flight 19, what's your last known position? Over. Thompson looked down at his map, then at the endless expanse of water below. The coastline should have been visible by now, but there was nothing but ocean in every direction. His training told him they were off course, but without working compasses, he couldn't tell how far they'd strayed. Base. Thompson paused, noticing something strange through his windshield. The air ahead seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. But this was December, and they were over open water. Base, we're seeing some kind of atmospheric disturbance. The air is... The radio erupted in static, drowning out the rest of his words. Thompson looked back at his formation. All 4 planes were still there, their pilots waiting for his guidance. William Anderson, Michael Davis, and Thomas Wilson. Good men, experienced pilots. They trusted him to get them home safely. The shimmering in the air grew more intense. Thompson's instruments began to fail one by one. First the altimeter, then the artificial horizon. The engine sound changed pitch, becoming deeper, almost like it was running underwater. All planes, tight formation. Thompson ordered, fighting to keep his aircraft steady. Whatever this is, we stick together. Through the static, he could hear fragments of panic from his squadron. Controls not responding. What's that light? Engines cutting. The shimmering air enveloped them like a giant soap bubble. Thompson's last clear thought was of his wife Mary back home, probably starting to prepare dinner, not knowing that her world was about to change forever. Then, in an instant that felt like eternity, Flight 19, 5 planes and 14 men, vanished from the skies above the Bermuda Triangle, leaving nothing behind but a mystery that would haunt the world for decades to come. At Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station, the radio operator stared at his silent equipment, the weight of what had just happened slowly sinking in. He reached for the red emergency phone, his hand shaking slightly. "Sir," he said when the line connected, "Flight 19 is gone. They've just disappeared." Dr. Emily Brooks stared at the old newspaper clipping on her office wall. The yellowed paper showed 5 TBM Avenger planes flying in formation, with the bold headline, "Flight 19 vanishes without a trace." She had looked at this image countless times during her research at MIT's quantum physics laboratory, but today felt different. Her computer screen displayed new data from the Bermuda Triangle region, electromagnetic readings that matched a theory she'd been working on for years. The numbers couldn't be a coincidence. A knock on her office door broke her concentration. Jack Reynolds stood in the doorway, his former Navy pilot's posture still evident in his straight back and squared shoulders. "Dr. Brooks, I'm the investigator you contacted about Flight 19, he said, walking into the room. His eyes went straight to the newspaper clipping. Emily stood up and shook his hand. "Please, call me Emily. Thanks for coming, Mr. Reynolds." "Jack," he corrected, pulling out a worn notebook. 20 years in the Navy, and I've never seen anything that matches what happened to Flight 19. Until last month. This caught Emily's attention. "What happened last month?" Jack opened his notebook and placed it on her desk. "I was consulting for a private flight company. One of their planes reported the exact same compass problems as Flight 19. The difference is, they made it back." Emily quickly turned her computer screen toward him. "Did they report seeing anything like this?" She played a video showing strange energy patterns over the triangle, captured by a research buoy. Jack's face went pale. "How did you get this?" "I designed the sensors myself," Emily explained, pointing to the wave patterns. "These energy signatures match quantum tunneling effects I've been studying. But they're massive. Nothing like this should be possible in nature." She pulled out a classified folder marked US NAV, top secret, that had arrived that morning. "Someone in the government noticed my research. This came from Admiral David Parker. It shows they detected similar energy patterns in 1945. Jack looked at the folder with surprise. "David Parker. He was my commanding officer. He's been investigating the triangle for decades." Emily spread out more papers on her desk. "Look at these dates: 1918, 1945, 1972, 1999. The pattern repeats every 27 years, and according to my calculations," she pulled up a calendar on her computer, "the next event is due this week." Jack finished, understanding dawning on his face. Emily nodded. "That's why I needed a Navy pilot. I've arranged a research vessel, but I need someone who knows these waters, someone who won't panic if things get strange." Jack picked up the old newspaper clipping, studying the faces of Flight 19's crew. Those men were experienced pilots. If something out there could confuse them. "That's exactly why we need to go," Emily said firmly. "Whatever happened to them is about to happen again. But this time, we'll be ready for it." She turned to a large map of the Bermuda Triangle on her wall, marked with dozens of red pins showing disappearances. "The answer is out there, Jack. We just need to be brave enough to find it." Jack was quiet for a moment, then smiled slightly. "Well, Dr. Brooks, it seems we have a mission. When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning," Emily replied, already reaching for her phone. "I'll call Admiral Parker. We'll need his clearance to access the exact coordinates where Flight 19 vanished." As they prepared to leave her office, the computer beeped with an alert. New energy readings were starting to appear in the triangle, stronger than anything Emily had seen before. The mystery that began in 1945 was about to reveal itself, ready or not. Admiral David Parker's beach house sat on a quiet stretch of Florida coastline. At 68 years old, he spent most days watching ships pass through the waters where he had once commanded fleets. Today, he had visitors. Emily and Jack sat in his sunny living room, surrounded by maps and old photographs. The Admiral's white hair caught the morning light as he pulled out a dusty box from his closet. "Every 27 years, he said, placing the box on his coffee table. "Like clockwork. Most folks think the triangle takes ships and planes randomly. They're wrong." He opened the box and took out a leather journal. "My grandfather started tracking the pattern in 1918. He was a lighthouse keeper, saw things that didn't make sense." Emily leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the journal. "What kind of things?" "Lights under the water, ships disappearing in clear weather. But here's the strange part. It always happened during the same 3-day window, every 27 years. The Admiral flipped through the yellow pages. 1918, 1945, 1972, 1999. And now, 2026. Jack finished. This week. The Admiral nodded. Flight 19 wasn't an accident. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He spread out a modern naval chart on the table. Look here. His finger traced a triangle pattern between 3 points. At each corner, he had marked dates of disappearances. The energy doesn't just appear anywhere in the triangle. It follows a path. Emily pulled out her laptop and opened her research data. The pattern in your grandfather's journal matches my readings exactly. She showed them a graph of energy spikes over time. But they're getting stronger. This week's event will be the biggest yet. Jack studied the naval chart closely. If we know where it's going to happen, we can be ready. It's not that simple, the Admiral warned. The Navy's tried before. In 1972, they sent a research ship to investigate. It disappeared too. In 1999, they sent planes with special equipment. All electronics failed as soon as they entered the zone. Emily smiled. But they didn't have my quantum sensors. I've designed them to work specifically under these conditions. The Admiral looked at her for a long moment. Dr. Brooks, what exactly do you think is out there? I think. Emily paused, choosing her words carefully. I think what we call the Bermuda Triangle is some kind of gateway. These energy patterns, they're similar to what we see in quantum tunneling experiments, just on a massive scale. A gateway to where? Jack asked. That's what we need to find out. Emily pointed to her energy readings. The next event starts tomorrow at sunrise. We have a chance to solve a mystery that's been haunting us for over a century. The Admiral stood up slowly and walked to his window. He looked out at the ocean, his face serious. I lost friends to the triangle. Good men and women, just gone. If you're really going out there. He turned back to them. I'm coming with you. Jack started to protest, but the Admiral held up his hand. I know these waters better than anyone, and I've got clearance to get you past the Navy patrols that will be watching the area. Emily nodded. We leave at dawn. Our boat is ready at the marina. As they gathered the maps and documents, the Admiral's old radio crackled to life with static. Through the noise, they heard the weather service announcing unusual electromagnetic disturbances in the area. It's starting, Emily said quietly, just like in 1945. They looked at each other, knowing that by this time tomorrow, they would either solve one of the world's greatest mysteries or become part of it. The research boat Navigator cut through the calm morning waters. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Emily checked her equipment for the 10th time while Jack steered the boat toward the coordinates they had chosen. Admiral Parker stood at the rail, watching the waves. His weather-worn face showed concern as he looked at the strange clouds gathering above them. They weren't like normal clouds. They seemed to glow from the inside. Equipment check, Emily called out, reading from her screens. Quantum sensors active, energy levels rising. She looked up at the glowing clouds, just like the reports from Flight 19. Jack checked their position on the GPS. We're entering the target zone, 3 miles to the exact spot where Flight 19 vanished. Suddenly, all their electronics started to act strangely. The GPS screen flickered and went dark. The boat's compass began to spin wildly. Even Emily's special sensors were giving odd readings. It's happening, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The energy levels are off the charts. The Admiral pointed ahead. Look at the water. The ocean in front of them had started to glow with a blue-green light. It wasn't like any bioluminescence they had ever seen. The light seemed to pulse with a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. All engines stop, Jack ordered, pulling back on the throttle. The boat slowed to a drift near the glowing water. Emily's sensors started beeping rapidly. These readings, they're exactly like the ones from 1945, but much stronger. She looked at her companions. We need to get closer. Are you sure about this? Jack asked, gripping the wheel tightly. Emily nodded. My equipment is designed to stabilize these energy patterns. If I'm right, we can safely enter the anomaly. The Admiral looked at his old journal, then at the glowing water. We've come this far, he said quietly. Jack carefully steered the boat forward. The glowing water surrounded them now, and the air itself seemed to shimmer like a heat mirage. Emily's equipment hummed as it worked to keep their electronics stable. Everyone hold on, she called out. Energy spike in 3, 2, 1. The world around them suddenly changed. The air filled with dancing lights of all colors, like an aurora had descended from the sky to wrap around their boat. The water beneath them became crystal clear, revealing depths that seemed to go on forever. It's some kind of gateway, Emily whispered, watching her readings. The energy patterns, they're creating a stable tunnel through space. Through the lights, they saw something that made them all freeze. The large, dark shape was rising from the depths. As it came closer, they could see it wasn't one shape, but 5. 5 planes, perfectly preserved, floating up from the bottom of the ocean. Flight 19, the Admiral breathed, his voice filled with awe. But the planes weren't broken or rusted. They looked brand new, their metal gleaming in the strange light. And as they watched in amazement, they saw movement in the cockpits. That's impossible, Jack said, grabbing his binoculars. There's someone in those planes. Emily's sensors were going crazy now, but she barely noticed. She was too busy staring at the planes and the even larger shape that was emerging behind them. Something vast and geometric, clearly not made by human hands. We're not alone, she said, her voice filled with wonder and excitement. We never were. And now we know why they disappeared. The lights grew brighter around them, and the navigator began to move forward on its own, drawn toward the massive structure rising from the depths. They were about to discover the truth that had been hiding in the Bermuda Triangle for all these years. The navigator passed through the gateway in a flash of bright light. When the light faded, Emily, Jack, and Admiral Parker found themselves in an enormous enclosed space. Their boat floated in a circular pool of water, surrounded by smooth metal walls that rose hundreds of feet high. Look, Jack pointed upward. Through a clear dome above them, they could see stars, but not in any pattern they recognized. Emily checked her instruments with shaking hands. We're not on Earth anymore. This is some kind of space station. The 5 planes from Flight 19 hung suspended in the air nearby, held by beams of soft blue light. As they watched, a platform extended from the wall toward their boat, like a welcoming dock. I guess we're meant to get out, the Admiral said quietly. After they tied up the boat, they walked along the platform. The air smelled clean and fresh, and despite being in space, the gravity felt normal. Their footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. A door opened in the wall ahead of them. Standing there, looking exactly as they did in 1945, were the crew of Flight 19. Lieutenant James Thompson led his men forward, his face a mix of confusion and relief at seeing other humans. Welcome to the observatory, Thompson said, his voice strong and clear. We've been waiting a long time for someone to figure it out. Emily stared at them in amazement. You haven't aged a day. Time works differently here, Thompson explained. For us, it feels like only a few weeks have passed. The station's AI told us that back on Earth, it's been over 70 years. Jack looked around the massive room. What is this place? Who built it? We call them the architects, Thompson said. We've never seen them, but they left this station to watch over Earth. It's not just us here. There are others from different times, different ships and planes that disappeared in the triangle. He led them through another doorway into a vast hall. Ships from many different times floated in the air, old sailing vessels, modern boats, and aircraft of all kinds. Below each one, in suspended animation, were their crews. The station picks specific people at specific times, Thompson continued. It studies how humans react to the unknown, how we adapt and learn. It's like a giant experiment. Emily's scientific mind was racing. The 27-year pattern. It's a regular sampling period. The station is monitoring human progress. Exactly, Thompson said. And now you're here because humanity has reached a crucial point. The AA says it's time for a choice. They reached a central control room filled with floating screens showing images of Earth from different time periods. A gentle voice filled the air. The station's eye. "Welcome, observers," it said. "You have shown remarkable persistence in solving this mystery. Now you must help decide humanity's next step." Admiral Parker, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "What kind of choice?" The AI displayed a series of images showing advanced civilizations on other worlds. "Earth stands at a crossroads. You can return with proof of our existence, beginning humanity's introduction to the galactic community. Or you can continue as you are, developing at your own pace." "And what about Flight 19? Jack asked. "And all these other people?" "Those who were taken can now return," the AI said. "Their role as subjects of observation is complete. They will help humanity understand what awaits among the stars." Emily looked at the screens showing Earth, then at the countless ships and their crews preserved in the station. They had solved the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle, but now they faced an even bigger question. Were humans ready to learn they weren't alone in the universe? Emily, Jack, Admiral Parker, and Lieutenant Thompson sat in a circular room within the station. Glowing screens surrounded them, showing scenes from Earth's history. The AI had given them 12 hours to make their decision. "We can't just spring this on people back home," Admiral Parker said, running his hand through his white hair. "The world would panic." Lieutenant Thompson nodded. "The AI showed us what happened to other civilizations that learned about alien life too quickly. Some of them tore themselves apart from fear." Emily walked to one of the screens showing current events on Earth. "But look at our world now. We're already searching for alien life. People are more prepared for this than ever before." Jack stood beside her. "What if we did it gradually?" He turned to face the others. "Instead of announcing everything at once, we start with Flight 19. The station's AI voice joined their conversation. "This approach has merit. Previous successful contacts often began with small revelations." Emily's eyes lit up with an idea. "The Navy already knows something strange happens in the Triangle. We could use that. Lieutenant Thompson and his crew could return first living proof that something extraordinary exists." "But what would we tell people?" Thompson asked. "We can't lie. We tell the truth," Emily said firmly. "Just not all at once. First, we reveal that Flight 19 was preserved in some kind of time anomaly. People will be amazed by that alone. Then, over time, we share more." The AI displayed new images showing possible futures. In some, Earth descended into chaos. In others, humanity reached for the stars with hope and courage. "There's something else to consider," Jack added. "All these other people here." He gestured to the hall where dozens of ships and their crews floated in suspension. "They have families too. People who never knew what happened to them." Admiral Parker stood up and walked to the center of the room. "I've spent my whole career dealing with government secrets. This is different. This isn't just about national security. It's about humanity's future." Thompson looked at his fellow pilots floating nearby in their suspended state. "My men trust me to make the right choice. They followed me into the Triangle in 1945. Now I need to lead them home." Emily turned to the AI. "Can we wake everyone? Let them all decide." "Yes," the AI responded. "But remember, the more people who know, the harder it becomes to control how the truth reaches Earth." They spent the next hour waking and talking with other crews. Ship captains from the 1800s spoke with airline pilots from the 1990s. Everyone had a different view, but most agreed on one thing. They wanted to go home. Finally, Emily stood up to address everyone. "Here's what I propose. We return in stages. Flight 19 goes first, since people still remember them. Their return proves something extraordinary exists. Then, month by month, we bring others back. Each return teaches humanity a little more about what's out there. And the station? Jack asked. Do we reveal its existence? Eventually, Emily said. But first, we help people understand that they're not alone in the universe. We show them there's nothing to fear. The AI's voice held a note of approval. This plan balances caution with progress. It allows humanity to adapt gradually while maintaining hope and wonder. Thompson stepped forward. Then we're agreed? We go back. Everyone in the room nodded. The AI began preparing the return sequence, and Thompson gathered his crew. They would be first, stepping back into a world that had changed greatly since 1945. Emily looked at her companions, old and new. Together, they had solved one of history's greatest mysteries. Now they faced an even bigger challenge, helping humanity take its first steps into a larger universe. The morning sun rose over the Bermuda Triangle, its light touching 5 TBM Avenger planes hovering above the waves. The Navigator floated nearby, its crew watching as history prepared to repeat itself, in reverse. All systems ready, Emily said through the radio. She had spent hours making sure Lieutenant Thompson and his men knew about the changes in modern aircraft equipment. Remember, fly exactly as we planned. In his cockpit, Thompson looked at the compass that now pointed steadily north. It feels strange, he said to his crew, like waking up from a long dream. The AI had created a simple cover story. The 5 planes would appear from a mysterious fog bank, their instruments working perfectly this time. The Navy already had ships in the area, ready to discover them. Jack checked the radar screen on the Navigator. Navy vessels are in position. They're waiting for our signal. Admiral Parker picked up the radio. Remember, Thompson, stick to what we practiced. Act confused about the date. The story needs to be believable. High above, Thompson led his squadron in a perfect formation. The other 4 pilots, Robert Miller, William Anderson, Michael Davis, and Thomas Wilson, followed close behind. Their planes looked exactly as they had in 1945, down to the smallest detail. There's the fog, Emily said, watching a white bank of clouds form right where the AI said it would. This was part of the plan, a mysterious but natural-looking phenomenon to hide the truth of their return. Thompson's voice crackled over the radio. Flight 19 beginning approach. God, I hope my wife held onto my favorite chair. Despite the serious moment, they could hear him smile. The 5 planes entered the fog bank. For a few seconds, they disappeared from view. Then, right on cue, they emerged on the other side, visible to not only the Navigator's crew, but also to the Navy ships waiting nearby. Immediately, the radio came alive with excited voices from the Navy vessels. Contact. 5 aircraft spotted. This is impossible. Are those Avengers? Emily, Jack, and the Admiral listened as their carefully planned story began to unfold. The Navy ships approached the planes, their crews amazed by what they were seeing. Thompson and his men played their parts perfectly, acting surprised by the modern ships and equipment. This is Lieutenant James Thompson of Flight 19. Thompson broadcast on the emergency channel. We seem to be having some trouble with our calendars. What's today's date? The response from the Navy flagship was filled with disbelief. Lieutenant, this is the U.S. Reagan. Today's date is December 27, 2024. Thompson's acted shock sounded very real. That's impossible. We took off in 1945. Emily watched the radar screen as more Navy ships converged on the area. News helicopters would arrive soon. They had made sure word would leak to the press. By tonight, the whole world would know about Flight 19's impossible return. First step complete, Jack said quietly. Now we wait and see how people react. Admiral Parker nodded. Thompson and his men will need our help adjusting. The world has changed so much. They're strong, Emily said, watching the planes begin to land on one of the Navy ships. And they understand how important this is. They're not just pilots anymore. They're the bridge between humanity and what's waiting out there among the stars. The fog bank began to fade, taking with it any trace of the gateway. But Emily knew it was still there, hidden beneath the waves. Inside the station, dozens more crews waited for their turn to return home, each one another small step toward preparing humanity for the truth. On the Navy ship, Thompson stepped from his plane onto the deck. He looked up at the sky, so familiar and yet different after all these years. His return was just the beginning of a much bigger story, one that would change the world forever. 6 months had passed since Flight 19's return. Emily stood in front of her television, watching Lieutenant Thompson speak to a crowd at the United Nations. His story had captured the world's imagination, but today everything would change. "The time has come," Thompson said to the gathered leaders, "to tell you the full truth about where we were and what we found." In the audience, Jack and Admiral Parker sat with the families of other missing crews. Over the past months, more ships and planes had mysteriously returned. Each one added another piece to the story, preparing humanity for today's revelation. Emily's phone buzzed. A message from the station's eye appeared. Energy signatures stable. Gateway ready when needed. On the TV screen, Thompson began showing images of the space station. Gasps filled the UN chamber. "This is where we were," he explained. "A place built by others who share this universe with us." The world watched in amazement as he revealed everything. The station, its purpose, and the truth about the Bermuda Triangle. In homes and offices across Earth, people stopped what they were doing to listen. "We are not alone," Thompson said clearly. "But more importantly, we have nothing to fear. Those who built the station have been watching us grow, waiting for the right time to help us join a larger community among the stars." Emily smiled as she saw how calmly people were taking the news. Their plan had worked. By returning Flight 19 first and slowly revealing more mysterious returns, they had given humanity time to adjust to the idea that something extraordinary was possible. In Times Square, crowds watched the UN speech on giant screens. Instead of panic, there was excitement. People hugged strangers and pointed at the sky. In other cities around the world, the reaction was the same, wonder rather than fear. Jack called Emily from the UN. "It's working," he said. "Even better than we hoped." The world's leaders are already talking about forming a committee to handle first contact. Admiral Parker's voice came on the line too. "The Navy's releasing all its triangle files. Every nation is agreeing to share what they know. It's like everyone just needed permission to believe." Emily looked at her computer screen, where the AI was showing her images from around the world. People were gathering in parks and town squares, holding up signs welcoming their cosmic neighbors. "What about the others?" she asked. "The rest of the crews still in the station?" "They'll all come home now," Jack replied. "No more need for secrets. Thompson's telling them about the recovery schedule right now." On TV, Thompson was explaining how the station had preserved people from different times. "Think of them as ambassadors," he said. "Each one chose to help humanity take this step. They gave up everything they knew to be part of this moment." Emily walked to her window and looked at the stars. Somewhere up there, the station continued its work, monitoring humanity's reaction. The AI had told them this was just the first step. Once people accepted this truth, there would be more to learn. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Lieutenant Thompson. "Thank you for bringing us home. Ready to help show humanity what's next." She typed back quickly. "Always ready." The TV showed crowds cheering as Thompson finished his speech. The mystery of Flight 19 and the Bermuda Triangle had finally been solved. But for humanity, it wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Their real journey, out into the stars, was just about to start. In her office at MIT, Emily pinned a new article next to the old Flight 19 newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Humanity takes HFY Sci-Fi to the stars." Below it, she wrote a note. "This is how it begins."